dancers of all levels. More information at ameliaisland.com/dance. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Noah Hertz in for Ann Schindler, and on today's First Coast Connect, it's the biggest stories of the week. The state attorney determines an officer was justified in striking a motorist, calling the narrative around the viral video dangerous. A Springfield coffee shop sees an outpouring of community support after its co-owner is taken into ICE custody. Jacksonville council members defend texting each other about pending bills, saying they did not violate state sunshine laws. We'll talk about all that and more with our panel of journalists on our Friday Week in Review. Later, a sweet local festival returns. You can join the conversation on air by calling 904-549-2937. You can email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or reach out on social media. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Kristen Wright. President Trump is on his way to Anchorage, Alaska, for a high-stakes face-to-face with Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss ending Russia's war in Ukraine. The Kremlin leader is also on the way and stopped first in Russia's Far East. NPR's Charles Maynes reports from Moscow.
In a quirk of time zones, Putin is leaving Russia Friday evening, traveling a short distance but across the international date line to arrive in Alaska Friday morning. In advance of the summit, he thanked Trump for what Putin called sincere efforts to negotiate a peace in Ukraine and suggested they use the Alaska summit to also engage in nuclear arms talks. In addition, Kremlin officials have suggested the U.S. could reap huge profits from economic deals with Russia in the Arctic and elsewhere. Those offers come as Trump has resurfaced threats to impose sanctions and tariffs on Russia should Putin fail to sign on to a ceasefire deal in Ukraine. Yet, at least publicly, Putin has shown little sign of compromise. Charles Maynes, NPR News, Moscow.
D.C.'s Attorney General has filed a lawsuit challenging the federal takeover of the city's police department, setting the stage for a power clash. NPR's Amy Held reports it's unclear who's in charge of Washington, D.C.'s Metropolitan Police Department.
Since Trump announced the takeover Monday, Mayor Muriel Bowser has largely struck a conciliatory tone. Now she's pushing back on Attorney General Pam Bondi's latest directive, naming the Drug Enforcement Agency chief as the city's emergency police commissioner. D.C.'s Attorney General Brian Schwab calls the move unlawful. Bondi says it's part of the administration's illegal immigration crackdown.
D.C. will not remain a sanctuary city actively shielding criminal aliens.
Bondi told Fox News Channel's Sean Hannity last night it's not just about D.C.
We are going to stop crime, Sean, in D.C., and we're going to clean it up in this country.
Violent crime is down, but polling shows a majority of Americans still point to it as a big problem. Amy Held, NPR News.
Texas Democratic state lawmakers who left the state to block Republican attempts to redraw congressional maps to win more seats announced they're ready to come back under certain terms. They've been in other states boycotting a special legislative session in Austin. This is Democratic Caucus Chair Gene Wu.
We are going to wait until we have some victories, until our victories are certain, right? And those victories are what California is going to do and the end of this first corrupt special session. We want to see this special session dead before we do anything else.
California Governor Gavin Newsom is moving ahead with plans to redraw congressional maps in his state to favor Democrats. The state will put a ballot question to voters in November. Teams representing the U.S. and many other countries are in Beijing this weekend to prove themselves in boxing, soccer, and several other contests. This is NPR News.
Good morning. You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Stephen Ponson. It is now 9:04. If you're in need of food, FarmShare is distributing fresh and canned food in Palatka tomorrow morning. The state's largest food bank will hold a free distribution event near North 19th Street and St. John's Avenue starting at 9 in the morning until supplies last. You will need a vehicle since this is a drive-through only event. A defiant stand in Delray Beach as city leaders hold firm on keeping an LGBTQ pride mural in place despite pressure from the state. At the heart of the city's arts district is a rainbow mural painted on the intersection of Northeast 1st Street and 2nd Avenue. Wilkin Brutus has the latest.
The city has so far refused calls to remove it, despite Florida Department of Transportation officials decrying the mural they say violates road safety rules. The mural was unveiled back in 2021 and was meant to celebrate LGBTQ pride and inclusion. But now, with other cities like West Palm Beach and Boynton Beach backing down under state pressure, Delray Beach officials are standing firm, despite threats of funding cuts for noncompliance.
In June, Governor Ron DeSantis signed a measure requiring Florida roads to follow federal marking standards. That law effectively bans any kind of display of symbols officials consider political or social art. It's going to be a hot end to the work week here in Northeast Florida and Southeast Georgia. A heat advisory is in place later this morning until 7 this evening. Scattered showers expected to develop this afternoon and into the early evening as well and move to the east with some strong storms possible around the I-95 corridor.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Procter & Gamble, maker of ZzzQuil, with a range of products designed to relieve occasional sleeplessness to help people fall asleep. Learn more at ZzzQuil.com. This is NPR.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Opinions expressed on the First Coast Connect Week in Review are those of our panelists and do not reflect the views of WJCT News 89.9.
Good morning. I'm Noah Hertz in for Ann Schindler, and it's Friday, which means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. Among our topics today, an officer seen striking a driver in a viral traffic stop video acted lawfully, according to a report by the state attorney. Community rallies around a business owner taken by ICE after suffering a mental health crisis. Text messages between council members raise questions about possible sunshine law violations. A new law takes effect targeting super speeders. And JSO pleads for safety amid an uptick in deadly motorcycle accidents. To talk about all that and more, I am joined here today by Jack Webb, attorney and former city council president. Morning, Jack.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. David Bauerlein, Metro reporter at the Florida Times-Union. Good morning.
Good morning.
Dan Scanlan, reporter here at WJCT News 89.9. Hello, Dan.
Hello.
And Sylvia Perry, editor of the Jacksonville Free Press. Good morning, Sylvia.
Good morning. It's Friday.
Happy Friday. Exactly. That's the right attitude to have. So we're going to start this morning with a topic that has been in the headlines pretty much nonstop since the news broke last month. The arrest and the viral video showing an officer hitting 22-year-old Will McNeil. This week, the state attorney's office issued their final investigation into the matter, clearing the officer of any criminal wrongdoing. Dan, you've covered this quite a bit for WJCT in Jacksonville today. Can you bring us up to speed with what's in this state attorney's report?
Well, it's a 10-page report with 4 pages of photos and lots of links to interviews and videos. The bottom line is the state attorney's office indicates that this is not the proper and safe way to handle a traffic stop. If you are stopped, say yes, follow the commands. They are stating that there's been some misinformation put out by his attorneys, and also there has some concern, says Melissa Nelson, to some of the things that were being said about how you handle a traffic stop. There were a few things that we didn't see. The initial hit by the officer to Mr. McNeil sure looks like more than a slap, more like a punch, but it is actually a very fast hand to the chin and push it away. The state attorney's office investigated that, talked to the officer, or at least looked at the officer's report, and indicates that that is not a show of force. That apparently is, and I've been hearing rumors about this, a procedure that officers use in a confined space to get the suspect away from them to get better control of them. But it did look a little brutal.
Yeah.
They also was some discussion of the second hit, which was more of a punch through the window, as well as the third punch that you see as he's under arrest. There was discussion about the gun that was reported by Mr. Crump and Mr. Daniels, the attorneys. Apparently that is, according to the 10-page report, that was leveled by an officer as the arrest was occurring with Mr. McNeil outside the car. So, and the interesting detail is that the police were doing a task force on drugs and were actually surveilling an alleged drug house, saw McNeil's vehicle or saw a silver SUV pull up, and then leave with headlights off, and that precipitated a traffic stop. The question of whether the weather was bad enough to demand headlights and windshield wipers is commented on briefly, but we all have seen the video, and there's no real evidence of anything other than a cloudy day.
Bottom line is that the state attorney's office is saying that the police officers involved here didn't do anything wrong.
Basically, they were focusing on the first officer, who handled the traffic stop and then handled the initial arrest and grab. And no, they say he did nothing criminally wrong, which is what they said that weekend. But now it's taken 3 weeks and 14 pages of documents.
Sylvia, did you want to add something?
It's interesting that they say that we go back to the inclement weather, but yet none of the officers that pulled up in this inclement weather had their lights on or their wipers on. Were they following the law? I mean, that is indeed a question.
That's a topic I've thought of too, but I don't know. Do police cruisers have the ability to turn off their daytime running lights or headlights so that they can remain quiet and sort of hidden in the dark? They may have a switch to do that on a police car, so that may not be indicative of the weather. I don't see a lot of raindrops on Mr. McNeil's vehicle, so that is, to me, interesting that it certainly wasn't raining when it didn't look like it was raining there when he was pulled over. Maybe it was, a block away.
They also neglected to even interview the victim.
Correct.
Who walked away with a concussion, with stitches, with a missing tooth.
Yep.
So, I mean, it sounds like a very one-sided way to actually come to a conclusion.
Yeah, I found this thing just really fascinating. Again, Dan, to your point, I think everyone kind of the traffic stop itself smells pretextual. Okay. All right. It's a traffic violation. Unfortunately, Supreme Court precedent that was cited to in the SAO report states, all right, there was reasonable suspicion for violation of a traffic offense. Okay. So you pull them over. At that point, it escalated. Unfortunately. Now, to your point, the state attorneys didn't say they acted lawfully. They said they didn't act unlawfully. Yeah. So, but
Important
did they act properly?
Yeah.
Did they act properly? Who knows? I mean, again, the report spoke as well to this tool. Okay, and they cited to training manuals, things of that nature, different protocols that they were trained on. And he testified in his under oath, and after having been read his rights, that's Officer Bowers, that they are trained. This is a diversionary tactic. It was not a use of force, and it was a tool that he had learned as a narcotics cop. Okay, so he's not a traffic enforcement officer. They'll leave it at that, but. That said, it escalated from there, and very unfortunate. Went back and looked through all of this stuff, and I guess what I'm saying is that I think it's significant that the officer is still not returned to active duty at this point. So whereas the SAO is saying, all right, we're not going to charge this guy criminally because we can't get there, and more. But did he act properly? Don't know.
And don't forget, the sheriff's office does the criminal investigation as if you are a normal arrested suspect. The sheriff's office looks at, did you violate department rules? And that's a use of force. Now, here you're talking about use of force in the state attorney's office report. Will the sheriff's office determine that use of force was done incorrectly? That is up to what they discuss, and the public is no longer allowed into the use of force meetings, which are police administrators. So we'll have to wait until it pops on the portal, the person's portal there. But I don't know. I don't know.
I know David is dying to jump here. I just want to leave you with this, though. I think the SAO did what they did. They did a good job of untangling a very, very tightly pulled knot and kind of parsing through it. There was no testimony offered as to the pretext issue, whether the traffic stop, but there was conclusion that there was reasonable suspicion to initiate the stop. That said, I don't even know if this case will fly on the civil side. I mean, in light of the law and in light of let's face it, the video is very jarring. Yeah. But the video, I don't know if it's going to get across the threshold for civil liability. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
and I think the citation for driving without headlights, that was dropped.
Mhm.
And he was, I think, pleaded to driving with a suspended license,
Mhm.
and also charge of resisting an officer without violence. So, yeah, I think the explanation for not interviewing McNeil was that he had given some statement on his Facebook post. He'd been at press conferences. Seems like that, though, you'd still want to bring him in and talk to him under oath and ask him the questions to find out, to complete the investigation. But yeah, the whole thing about the distraction punch, I'm still not sure that I completely understand
Distracted for
that
what?
and how that. Yeah,
Well, I was
guess-
hearing that literally in the days after the initial incident, and that apparently that it's a procedure. I did not have the chance to ask any of my retired cop buddies if or not that's done, but I can understand the logic of pushing a suspect away from you in a tight space to gain control of that person, and that may be something they teach at the academy. Who knows? I find it interesting that there's still the claim that he was reaching for the knife, which is a pretty nasty looking blade. But as Ben Crump and Mr. Daniels, his attorneys, have stated, there seems to be on none of the videos any evidence that Will McNeil is reaching down, and it's down buried under stuff at his feet, underneath glass. The only time we see it on the body cam video is briefly, and then the police have a video. So who knows?
Yeah, this is what I wanted to say too, is there is definitely still back and forth between what the SAO has said and what Mr. McNeil's attorneys have said in terms of, no, he was not reaching for a knife, whereas they say he was. I wanted to ask too, David, having covered things in Jacksonville like this for a really long time, does the state attorney says, it's vital, I'm reading directly from the report, it is vital for everyone's safety to comply with commands at the roadside and save the legal battle for the courtroom. Is this in line with how the state attorney's office has responded to situations like
that
this
was
in the
Melissa's
past?
actual quote on top of the report in the news release.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's consistent with the state attorney's previous advice. Certainly it's what the sheriff's office advice has been. You put yourself in the shoes of the person who was driving the car. Now the report says, well, he was resisting and was not following the commands because he knew his license was suspended, that he had drug paraphernalia and drugs. Those charges, by the way, were not pursued. And that was the reason why he was not following the commands. The other side of it is that, you're driving and then suddenly out of nowhere, police are pulling you over and you feel like you did nothing wrong, and so you're kind of like in a situation like this where, there's surrounded by officers who are telling you to do something, and you have maybe a natural human reaction to say, what's this all about? And he kept saying, no, call your supervisor. I'm not going to do anything till you call the supervisor. And I didn't see and he did not physically resist. He did close the door and did not follow their commands. There's no doubt about that.
At least as far as we can see in the video. Yeah.
Well, and he was told 6 times to come out.
How are you going to keep something for the courtroom? But for this young man having this video, it would have been his word against the officers, and the officer clearly omitted incidents from the report. So it was his only recourse was to have the video, and then to save it for the courtroom, my word versus yours, an officer of the law, it would have been no case whatsoever.
And Daniels and Crump's news release this week states also that the state attorney's office has not talked about, quote, slamming Mr. McNeil's face into the asphalt while he was under control and in custody. Now, that obviously is what resulted, or maybe resulted in some of the injuries. The 3 hits to the face also could have resulted in a chipped tooth and some other issues.
No. One thing I think Melissa Nelson's advice would leave the battle for the courtroom is very practical and very wise, at least in the immediate situation. But that does not absolve the state attorney's office from investigating whether or not it was a pretextual stop to begin with. Okay, I mean, again, you're just opening the door because let's face it, they were surveilling the guy, right? He's at a known drug location. So why did they pull him over? Why did they pull him up? Because they thought he had drugs in the car. All right, they were right. Actually, he did. He had a scale and he had a pipe with residue in it. And he had marijuana on him, so he was engaged in perhaps illegal
And
activity.
that is visible in some of the body cam. You can
Right.
look and see the small bag of pot being pulled out of his
But
pocket.
based on the circumstances, but for the traffic stop, would they have gained that evidence? No, they would not have. But that said, that's all I want to say is that I get it, because the reality is, you might beat the rap, but you ain't going to beat the ride, right? But you can't have a situation where everyone's going for a ride and then it's left to these individuals to defend themselves against the rap. That's the problem.
Well, there is more investigation. Crump has
Yes.
demanded a U.S. DOJ investigation into the incident and the sheriff's office. He's demanded that before because he's handled some high-profile cases here locally and in southeast Georgia that we've been covering. So there is that possibility, and there's the claim of a lawsuit coming. So this may end up in court to be discussed sooner or later.
If you're just joining us, I'm talking to Dan Scanlan, Sylvia Perry, David Bauerlein, and Jack Webb about the latest stories of the week. You can join the conversation by calling 904-549-2937 or emailing firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. We're also streaming live right now on Facebook and the WJCT YouTube page. I want to take a call real quick here. This is from Tom on the West Side. Thank you very much for calling in, Tom. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Good morning to y'all.
Good morning.
I just want to ask, is it appropriate for the police who supposedly serve the citizens of this city to initiate violence against a citizen?
All right. Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I think part of this does come back to questions of trust in the police department. And that's part of, I know, what Melissa Nelson said in this report about misinformation flying around and all this stuff. I mean, how does this impact trust in the police and based on how they acted?
Well, that's kind of what I mean. I think the common theme from this story and from your next story, is the overall trust in policing, not only in this community but in the country. I mean, in the state and the country, and that's a problem. It's a problem, Yeah, and again, it goes back to, dude, I'm being pulled over for what? All right, cop does not have a right to initiate force against a citizen that is not justified under the law. I mean, this is what they're trained to do. They're trained to de-escalate, number one. But it's a great question.
Yeah, the breaking of the window came after multiple warnings we were going to do it. But I will tell you, that was a pretty dramatic incident. You could see the hand, and I guess there was some kind of puncture tool, and then it's followed by the slap or the shove. The face shove, and if you watch it without any context, it is a very violent and jarring episode. And then to see him pulled out, and then an uppercut as he's then dragged down to the chin, is jarring. I will tell you, I've been pulled over as an old white guy many times by police, and they've all been nice. But I will also tell you, one evening an officer pulled me over, claimed I'd cut him off, and yelled at me, and then peeled out of the parking lot. Didn't know you could do that in a 6-cylinder Explorer. And I'm sitting there going, what? Because this was not a demeanor I expected, and I have never publicly talked about this. With all the polite interactions I've had as a white guy, I admit that, so that could be different. This was a little jarring and emotional. No ticket. I promise I never saw him, but whatever. Just laying that out there. Interactions that are and are not what you think under the book should be.
The fact he even had a gun pointed at his head throughout is enough to scare someone to death.
Absolutely.
But that does state that gun was during the actual takedown outside, and it was not pointed at him when he was inside the vehicle, because I'm looking at it right there.
But that's what they have on video.
Yes, I know that, but this is apparently done after he was out of the car and under arrest.
Another omission.
Well, it's in the state attorney's report, but I do not remember seeing that, and I don't even remember seeing it on the video. It actually was pulled by someone who took a real deep dive into that.
Hey, last comment on this thing, as far as the force goes. Yeah, cops can use force, but the Fourth Amendment prohibits excessive force.
I want to take one more call here about this before we move on. We got John from St. Johns County. You hear us, John?
Yes.
Good morning.
Or rather, good morning. I've lived in a lot of cities, and in most places they have a police force and a sheriff's department. The police force is part of the neighborhood. They interact on a daily basis. They may know you. The sheriff's department always has an aggressive attitude, and when they come in, it's a serious situation. All this town has is a sheriff's department, and they always have an aggressive confrontational attitude. I've called them twice in the 10 years that I've been here, and they show up like they're a SWAT unit. I have a 15-year-old son who's about to learn to drive, and I have told him the sheriff's department is not your friend. You call mom and dad, you say nothing. You don't say, it wasn't me, it was him, because that will make you a witness. Basically, name, rank, and serial number, stay away from them. I think they're part of the problem that's holding back this area.
Thanks for calling in, John.
Well, the old bit of history is when the city consolidated, the county road patrol joined up with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and became one unit. And oddly, our sheriff's officers are officers and not deputies like in the rest of the states.
This is a question for the Charter Revision Commission next 10 years or whatever.
I've also seen and had many interactions with police who come quietly rolling up and saunter up to the front door to ask a question. So I'll counter his comment. Aggression we certainly see because it then comes to the forefront and media covers it. But in my interactions, most of the time, and I've had to call police for stuff as a citizen, they just drive up and we start a conversation.
I want to move on to our next topic here because it's similar in line with some of the conversations we're having. One of the owners of a popular Springfield coffee shop right here in Jacksonville is in ICE custody after being detained following a mental health crisis. Sylvia, I want to start over here. What do we know about Diana Marcela Mejia Pedraza, who was arrested just recently?
Yes, we know that she is an owner of a coffee shop in Springfield for the past 10 years, that she has a Social Security card, pays her taxes, and has been an entrepreneur. She was at in St. Augustine, Dollar Tree, I believe, with her family, had a mental crisis of sorts. They thought it was a panic attack, called the 911. Police show up. They asked her to Baker Act her so she can get the help that she needed, and now she's ended up in ICE custody in South Florida, and nobody can contact her.
And like you said, her family is saying that she's here legally awaiting permanent status. Her family also says they haven't had the opportunity to speak with her since she was taken into ICE custody. Do we know anything else about her condition since she's been taken into custody? Is there any other information here? Or?
My understanding is that she was hospitalized even after she was removed by ICE and taken into ICE custody. She was hospitalized for these issues. So, that's all I've read. But what's frightening is that where's the due process protection? Where are the due process considerations? I mean, it's eroding very quickly. It's an eroding shoreline of constitutional protections, and it's going out to sea real fast.
Well, and it's like you said, Sylvia, I know this is definitely a tricky one because it's not dissimilar from what our caller said. This was a situation where her family called 911 expecting local law enforcement to show up, and local law enforcement did show up, but the result then was an ICE arrest, which is something they were absolutely not expecting when they called 911. I know since the news of this broke, too, there's been a lot of discussion about it on social media and among people here in Jacksonville. There's been some comments, too, from our local lawmakers. David, have you heard what local lawmakers have said about this?
No, I haven't heard about that. I will say that just jumping off what Jack was saying in the earlier segment, that, part of the issue with enforcement of immigration law, and the woman was here, she was applying for permanent status. She was here under legal asylum, so she was legally in the country. And then I guess at some point after she was, her family called 911 and ICE got involved. Now she's in ICE custody. And so there is this issue of how police handle these cases, because on the one hand, obviously, they're being called upon more and more to enforce federal immigration law, especially in Florida. On the other hand, if people who are here either as seeking asylum or without documentation are reluctant to call the police because they think it'll trigger the federal application of the law, it can have a chilling effect. If this family had known that she would be taken into ICE custody if they called to seek mental health for her, they probably would not have done that. And then what happens next? to her or to others.
Yeah.
If you have a case where people who are here in the country, either because they're waiting legal asylum or they just simply don't have the documentation, are witnesses to a crime, and they say, I don't want to, I'm not going to report this, or I'm not going to, then that makes it harder for police to solve crimes. And so, so there's it's a real situation in terms of being able to, carry out the duties of the police to protect, enforce crimes, and also immigration law at the same time.
It's interesting. I think Dan was saying off before we went on the air that it was the act of calling 911 that kind of put her
the mantra
in
right now
in the criminal justice
the mantra right now
system.
of immigration is that they're trying to rid the streets of illegal immigrants who are criminals.
Right.
I don't believe this is a criminal because she has not been tried. She's not been convicted. She had a mental issue, but that could have been the light bulb that went off. That ICE then came in. Ooh, look, a criminal, and not per se, but it fits some of the parameters of what we hear from public statements from ICE. We're looking for criminals to get rid of them. Sorry to say.
It also, as Jack says, we have to underline, bold, and emphasize that these are people that have been contributing to our society, employing citizens, etc., and they disappear off the face of the earth. And there's nothing we can do. Florida is turning into almost like a reign of terror for people of color. And that's a scary thing to be known for.
Well, Sylvia, I wanted to ask you too, because I know that this is local. This is something that's going on in our community, but it is part of a much wider conversation statewide and across the country. We haven't really seen as much of the targeted immigration enforcement here in Jacksonville the way that has been going on in Miami and in other parts of the country. But how does this fit into the bigger picture of what immigration enforcement is doing now compared to what they were doing a couple years ago?
Oh, it is definitely making its mark. I will give you as an example. I know there's a food truck around the corner from my office, a Latino food truck, and it's a popular place, but it has gone to basically nil of walking up to getting food. And I'm like, wow, it's so easy. And the young lady tells me people are scared. People are scared to come work. People are scared to come and get their food because they feel like somebody's always watching them. And
Wow.
I, on a broader level, I have friends around the country. They're like, we're not coming to Florida. We're not coming to Florida. No, I don't want to retire there. I don't want to do anything. And I, say this is a moment in time.
It's interesting. I want to tackle our next topic here. We're moving over to City Hall, so this will be a little bit different. Jacksonville City Council members, including the council president, were texting each other recently about a bill as the committee was in discussion about it. David, you've reported on this story for the Times-Union. Can you give us a little breakdown of what this is all about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it involves the Sunshine Law, which is basically the ability of the people to know what to follow their government in action through public meetings and public business is accessible to everybody. So essentially, there was a meeting of a city council committee. The committee was taking up some amendments to a bill that was sponsored by the city council president. There was some question about whether the city council president was supportive of the amendments that were proposed by a different council member. And typically, or oftentimes, the person who sponsors the bill is right there in the council chambers, and they just turn to that person and say, "Are you okay with this? Do you support this?"
Out in public so that everyone listening
so
can hear
everybody's
it. Yeah.
following the conversation. They understand the discourse and how the decisions are being made that ultimately affect them. And in this case, the city council president, Kevin Carrico, wasn't there. He's not obligated to be there. But he was not there in attendance at the meeting. And so the council members who had questions about whether he supported these amendments texted him and asked him, are you okay with these amendments? And got a response that, yes, he was. And then at that point, then the chairman of the committee told the other committee, he'd gotten a text that Kevin Carrico is good with this. And so they moved forward to approve the amendments and move the bill forward. So the question obviously is, can city council members use text messages to communicate with each other about official business?
Mm-hmm.
And
the answer is no.
And the answer is no. I mean, Jack's been
Come
here
on, let's
before.
get
He's
to
been
it.
a
The
city
answer's
council
no,
member
boys.
there.
Yeah, former city council president Jack
all
Webb.
right,
I mean,
this-
you've been in
And
this
attorney.
position.
I've
and
been
attorney.
giggling about this one since I saw your story, David. Before we went on the air, we were talking about this. My conclusion is this: that the government and the sunshine virus can remain dormant for 15 years before it reemerges. Okay, and that's what's going on. I remember when I came on the council, 2007, 2008. There was actually a grand jury convened. Remember this, Scanlan?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. You guys were around for that. And everyone was marched into City Hall, and it was Harry Shorstein who declared war on the city council. And it kind of died down after a while, but now it has reemerged. And what I find interesting as well is that the boys running City Hall, running the council chambers right now, clearly have ignored prior admonitions or rulings or findings by the general counsel's office as to what is proper. This nonsense that they're acting, it's a procedural exception to the statute. Point me to the statutory language, number one. But no, it's not procedural. You're voting on a substantive amendment to the ordinance. So put that aside. The other thing I find fascinating is Michael Fackler's response. He's like, listen, Jason Gabriel wrote a memo on this thing. This is what the rules are. You guys clearly are not going to follow the rules because you don't really listen to the general counsel's office in any event because you don't trust me. You've already told me that. So this is not my responsibility. This is between you guys and who? The state attorney's office.
So
Have a nice day.
Through the chair to Councilor Webb.
I'll allow it.
The question is, if all of those text messages had been read into the record live at that hearing, would that have lessened Fackler's annoyance at this? Would that have actually ameliorated the 2015? Or is it the actual fact of texting that is whatever, even if you're asking another council member, what are you doing for lunch, is against the rules?
Well, no, again, it's got to fall under the statute. It's got to be council business, right? And this is clearly council business. The fact that you read it into the record doesn't change the fact that you didn't comply with the law. But if you're talking about going to lunch, that's clearly not council business. But if you go to lunch and you're talking about council business and you're not noticing it, well, that's a whole other issue. So.
Yeah, I think it's something that I think a lot of people don't quite realize until they become elected officials or until they see something about this in the news, that there are very strict laws in Florida about what you can talk to among each other. I mean, I have recently reported on the one board in St. Johns County where several people were accused of violating sunshine law, and then in order to avoid being tried, they stepped down from their seats. But I mean, that's a case where the state attorney's office got involved. I mean, Sylvia, you're looking over here. Do you think this is a case that it might kind of keep going up the chain, or is this something where everybody's just gonna kind of forget about it and move on?
Well, I do think at this point we have bigger issues to discuss, when it comes to that. And our council people, our elected officials, they're people too. They're people as well. And I'm sure Jack can attest that, I mean, he's been to lunch, he's been to dinner, you talk to lobbyists, and not everything is on the quote unquote up and up. They had their private phones, so pick your battles.
I agree with that, but this got all the hallmarks. I'm looking at my crystal ball and I'm like thinking, all right, politicians who live in glass houses shit and throw stones. Okay, so we get into the political silly season. Certain people want to jockey. They want to run for mayor. Whoa, you know what? Well, you violated the law, blah, 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 blah. So
now it's a problem.
That's a problem. That becomes, and, if I'm a Democrat political consultant, I'm already building a file.
Well, I do think there is this lingering question about whether somehow talking about procedures involving legislation is somehow not covered by the Sunshine Law. And I mean, I've reached out to State Attorney Melissa Nelson's office because her office does enforce the Sunshine Law and has brought cases in the past over the Sunshine Law. And because I think that's something that needs to be put really clearly. And if there is some exception there, then that needs to be explained why that is. If there's not, then I think that's probably something that city council members need to be told. I mean, there is basically, they've been given advice, just never text each other.
Never text.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just, and obviously if you follow that advice, it's not an issue. But if there is some belief among some city council members, at least, that what they did was allowable by the Sunshine Law, I think there's a responsibility by the state attorney to step in and make clear. That doesn't mean bringing charges or necessarily, but or a criminal case, but should be something that's communicated clearly to council members that this is a viewer of our office on those type of texts.
Take the wiggle
you
room out
guys,
of it.
you guys have been around for years, and I've been around for 40 plus. There's been computers at city council members' desks for a long time. Have there been previous issues of emails being sent during meetings that were discussing business or procedure? I mean, is this the first time that electronic messaging has been an issue?
No, it's not. And that's the whole point. I mean, we've been down this road before. 15 years, the virus is back. Here we go. It's going to flame itself out 2 or 3 years after we get through the next political silly season, and it'll come back 15 years later. But I remember when I came to the council, I was coming on the heels of the Harry Shorstein investigation, right? And we, although the city was fiscally strapped, they went out and bought us laptops or something, which I lost on the first day, so that everything, all communications were monitored or whatever. But, yeah.
So, Jack, with the Sunshine Law, you cannot speak with another elected official, but you can speak at length to constituents and et
Absolutely.
cetera about
Absolutely.
it.
But be careful
Wow.
because if you, let's say you do a town hall meeting and you have another council representative that's present and you got all your people there, you have to notice that meeting. It's just a question of notice.
Okay.
But yeah, you can talk to your constituents all day long.
Yeah. Yeah. People need to, but that's the public forum compared to, I guess.
But essentially, your aides and constituents, et cetera, could be conduits to another councilman.
Well, they could be. They
And
could
if-
be. And there have been times where you're using moles, you're using the media sometimes. Hey, I'm talking to Tia Mitchell. She's going to go talk to this person. I'm not saying Tia would ever do that, but yeah, I've heard things like that before.
And I would think I have memory of actually putting a absent council member on a speakerphone during a meeting to discuss this, and that could have been an option to bring them into the meeting in real time to discuss procedure on the record through a legitimate or allowable format.
Before we move on here,
there are some limitations on using go-betweens to sort of, you don't talk directly. Two council members don't talk, but kind of exchange messages through a third party. Then you are basically violating the Sunshine Law because that's business. If you want to do that conversation, call a public meeting, invite the public to listen so they actually have the front row seat to what's said.
It is what it is.
I want to remind everybody listening that we are talking about the big headlines this week. David Bauerlein, Dan Scanlan, Sylvia Perry, and Jack Webb are here with me. If you want to comment on the week's news, give us a call, 904-549-2937, or send an email to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. We're going to move on to one more topic here before we close things out. A Florida law recently went into effect that targets drivers who are going way over the speed limit, like not just 5-10 miles, but a lot over the speed limit. St. Johns County deputies arrested a man driving 112 miles per hour on a stretch of I-95 where the speed limit is only 70. Dan, what's up with this new super speeders law?
Well, obviously, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and others have been facing street racing a lot for the past a few years, and there's meetups and drag races and donuts and including in front of the sheriff's office a few years ago. So no surprise that this would happen. And we've all witnessed the folks who decide to weave in and out of traffic at 100 miles per hour. So the bottom line is if you're driving 100 miles an hour or more while passing other vehicles or exceeding the speed limit by 50, or here's the good one, if you're doing 35 miles over the speed limit on any street that has a speed limit, which means if you're going 10 over on your own street, you get a ticket. And there's some serious penalties, including losing license and jail time. As a car reviewer, driving cars that have a lot of horsepower, the temptation is there to go play. But with this rule now, I am a very careful driver in anything because they're much quicker than my car. any of them. But if you start being stupid, well, stupid is what stupid does. And I really think the rule is legitimate if it prevents you from plowing into somebody on the interstate, as I did witness one day with a street racer who hit an SUV with a pregnant woman on board. He'd passed me over at 100, and then I come around the bend on I-95, and here's the SUV upside down, and police are trying to pull the woman out. I gave a statement to FHP. I just could not believe what I'd seen.
Yeah, it's instead of, in this case with this new law, instead of just a fine as you would normally expect for a traffic ticket, if you were going excessively over the speed limit, you could see jail time for this kind of thing. I mean, we're all familiar with dangerous traffic conditions. We live in Florida, and the interstate here can be pretty hectic. Do we think that something like this will make us feel safer on the road? Do you feel a little more comfortable getting in your car on I-95?
I hope it is a deterrent. I mean, I don't normally give kudos to the state legislature, but on this one, I'll give them their due. I live in Mandarin, as you know, and adjacent to St. Johns County, and you know what 95 is like. You know, you hit the Duval County line into St. Johns County, it's wide open, bro.
Well, my car guy
I see
buddies
it
are
all the
talking
time.
about it. I go to car events, and all my car buddies are talking about this. They're well aware of this, and those that have their hot rods, including some of the suspect muscle cars out there, are aware of it. But yet I still see online occasionally, let's have a meetup.
For me, it's not the responsible car enthusiasts that are doing this. I mean, you see some idiot just barreling down all over the place. Just, I mean, really putting people's lives in danger. In Georgia, I think they've had this type of legislation or this type of law for a while. So
they will take you to jail. And that's also a good segue, Noah, into discussing the amount of motorcyclists that have been killed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been Duval County is leading the state this year in motorcyclist deaths. So far this year, we've had 24 motorcyclists who've been killed in crashes. And JSO is really asking for people to be safe. I mean, I assume you've been reading about this too, David. What's JSO saying to everybody on the roads right now?
Yeah, it's just a message of be safe. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's been any kind of fundamental change in that has resulted in this spike in motorcycle deaths. But obviously, it's obviously bears repeating. I mean, I know that at town halls that I've gone to where the sheriff's office is out there, traffic comes up a lot, and people are, concerned about just excessive speeds. There's certainly, Jacksonville has long had a high number of pedestrian deaths, traffic fatalities, and certainly we're very concerned about murders and violent crime, and understandably so. But people also die on the roads too, and it's preventable. That's the thing; it's all preventable.
If looking at the past traffic fatalities, the motorcycle fatalities, many of them were vehicles pulling in front of a motorcycle from a side street. So obviously, the driver of said vehicle is not looking left and right for the motorcyclist. Also, let's sadly report that last night we had our 100th traffic fatality in Jacksonville of a teenager on Biscayne Boulevard. Apparently, looking at the video, hit by a pickup truck. So that is very sad news. And if my numbers are correct, we are only in the 80s for last year in traffic fatality. So the numbers are horrendous. Bottom line, wear your helmets, wear your gear, put on a reflective vest. Don't motorcycle above the speed limit because you're tiny and we don't see you.
Yeah.
More people.
Last week we had a segment about these e-bikes.
Yes.
And so it's just like, it just feels like this whole, I mean, I watched the movie F1 over the summer, and it was a really fun movie, but that's a movie, and going out there and sort of the thrill of the speed. I mean, that's dangerous.
And remember, there is a racetrack in Keystone Heights. You can go down there and play safely.
Yes.
There is a drag strip being proposed for Callahan. You can go there when it's built, put on a helmet, safety gear, rescue unit, and you can go play within the limits off a public road.
Yeah, I think, David, your point, this is all preventable. Everybody just needs to be as careful as they can when they're on the roads, is what I'm hearing. Well, look, I want to go ahead and wrap up here. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Jack Webb, David Bauerlein, Dan Scanlan, Sylvia Perry. Thank you guys so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Up next, we got something sweet to check out this weekend. We're talking to a honeycomb carpenter and a third-generation beekeeper about the upcoming Honeybee Festival. We'll be right back.
Congaree and Penn, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpenn.com.
How a bizarre brain injury unlocked a patient's secret gift. I'm Dr. Joe Servin. Join me tomorrow at 4 for What's Health Got to Do with It, only in WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville.
On the next Florida Roundup, school vouchers. Florida has been a leader in school vouchers, allowing parents to take the money that would otherwise go to their public schools and instead use it for private school. Texas recently followed suit, which is why we'll be simulcasting our program with colleagues in Houston. So have you used school vouchers? Have you decided to stick with traditional public schools? Email us, radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. Then be sure to join us Friday, noon until 1.
The White House asked Congress to pull back federal funding for public media that had already been approved, and Congress has gone along. We want you to know that NPR and this station remain committed to informing the public, increasing your understanding of the world, and hopefully enriching your life in other ways. But without federal funding, we're relying on your support now more than ever. Please make your gift to this station today. Here's how, and thank you.
Visit wjct.org/sustain and thank you.
President Trump executes a federal takeover of Washington, D.C. and puts other cities on notice. This week on the Friday News Roundup, reaction and response from around the country, plus an inflation bump, DOJ gets access to sensitive data, and COVID is on the rise with the future of children's vaccines uncertain. We round up the news next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. The 6th annual Bee Fair Honeybee Festival is happening this Saturday at the Jacksonville Fairgrounds. Here to tell us about it are Michael and Christy Leach, beekeepers and the owners of Bee Friends Farms. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Christy, I want to start with you. You're a third-generation beekeeper and a honeybee educator. Is there honey in your blood, or was there a point when you decided that you wanted to continue your family legacy of beekeeping?
It's funny that you asked that because I always say I guess my kind of rounded life was meant to be, so to say. My grandfather, everybody kept bees. That was a long time ago. You had your backyard beekeeping. Everybody had it. They had like backyard chickens, so you had the eggs and the honey and things like that. And then my dad took it a step farther. He was one of the first commercial beekeepers in the state of Florida with F&F apiaries. Our last name was Fetters. So he would go to the vegetables down south and pollinate. And then my husband and I, when we met, then my dad had to kind of retire from it. And then we started taking over the business. And so it kind of came back around to, doing that kind of thing.
That's really cool. That's really, really cool. Michael, I know you're also involved with the Jacksonville Beekeeping Association. I'm kind of curious what the association does. Is this a place where people who, maybe have always been interested in beekeeping and want to learn more can get involved?
Yeah, so Jacksonville Beekeepers was formed just about the time I really got heavily into beekeeping. And it was a location for new beekeepers or people interested in beekeeping, or even beekeepers with a lot of experience, to just come together once a month and have discussions about bees. We also do apiary. I'm the apiary manager, so I go out and or mentor and teach people about bees at the Jack's Bee Club.
That's really cool. That's neat. This Honeybee Festival, it's been going on for 6 years now. How has this event changed since it first started?
So it's the concept was that we kept getting phone calls about bees when we started our business. And a lot of calls came in from the community. And I felt like, hey, there's a need here to connect us with the community. So the dream of it is to have a festival that could bring all of the beekeeping community together and allow the community to come in and just mingle among us and learn what we do and what it's about, whether they wanted to be beekeepers or not, this bee enthusiast alone could just come in and have a good day.
Oh, that's really cool.
And so
Yeah.
that's how it formed. It's been pretty consistent for the years. We have added some new things this year. We partnered with a local fair, which is going to be doing cooking demos and bringing the foodie side of beekeeping into the picture. So bees, we know, are responsible for about a third of our food sources, and local fair is a perfect company to partner with that. So
That's
they
cool,
can see
yeah.
both sides of the.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Christy too, other than just cool things to eat, I mean, what else can people look forward to at the Bee Festival?
Oh, there's lots of stuff. So we're going to have the 60 vendors, local wares from Jacksonville. So you can have the makers. So you can find really something for everyone. We're also going to have the mascots. So there'll be a lot of fun stuff for kids. We're going to introduce the new queen bee along with Rudy the Carrot from local fair. You can go around in our bee education zone. You'll be able to do some candle rolling, make some native bee houses, food trucks. So, very, very wonderful time for young and old.
Sounds like a little something for everybody.
Let
Yes,
me
sir.
add one thing too. We're going to have
Please.
a mead makers cask. A local
Ooh.
mead organization will be there making different meads. So there'll be educational presentations as well throughout that day, every hour.
Really
So
cool.
that might be something really interesting.
Neat. Well, look, that is the Jacksonville Bee Fair Honey Bee Festival. It's this Saturday from 10 to 4 p.m. at the Jacksonville Fairgrounds. Michael and Christy, thank you guys so much for being here and telling
Yeah.
people about
I
this show.
appreciate it. Thank you for bringing us.
Absolutely.
We'd love to be here. Thank you.
That is a wrap on our show for today. Thank you for listening. If you have feedback or suggestions, you can send either to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. And if you missed anything, catch our rebroadcast at 8 p.m. tonight. You can also find our entire archive at wjct.org or on your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget to listen Saturday at 4 when neurologist Dr. Joe Servin delves into compelling stories from the frontiers of neuroscience. The executive producer of First Coast Connect is David Luckin. Our show is produced by Stacey Bennett and directed by Brady Corum. Our theme music is performed by Club de Belugas. Join us Monday when we discuss a newly unveiled heritage trail honoring the 500-year history of Black residents in St. Johns County. I'm Noah Hertz, and you've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
First Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. One texter call can wreck it all. Learn more through distracted driving presentations for teens and the workforce. Arrive alive. Let's end distracted driving.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
This is WJCT News.